We're here with Karin Wilkinson,
Wilkinson.
sorry, Wilkinson. So, Karin, introduce yourself and tell us what you do and where we can find you.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Bennett. It's just such an honor to be here with you today. Love your show, big fan. I am the author of a book, Stolen Seed, Evil Harvest. Not something I ever thought I would do, not something I expected or intended to
I
do.
bet
We
not.
and God laughs, as they say, and that's what happened in this case. I'm an ex-tech person, a mom, grandma, that kind of stuff, just your everyday average girl next door, and who happens to have been interacting, taken by, had experiences with non human alien entities my whole life. And it sounds really crazy to some people, but it is something that has happened to more people than you can imagine. And probably your person, your neighbor next door, if not you, is what I'm finding out having done this. So, I started this journey working with L.A. Marzulli a couple of years ago. Was a part of his documentary on the abduction phenomenon, and from there, realized so many people wanted to talk to me about it after that, and it was really scary. I didn't expect that so many people would want to talk about this. I really thought it was such a taboo subject. There's so much stigma out there about this, but so many people wanted to talk about it. And he encouraged me to write this book, which I wrote very quickly. It's very easy to write the truth. It's very easy when you're just writing what happened. And I really felt like I had a lot of guidance from God on this, and a lot of spiritual guidance, and just put this book out there. And since then, I've just been able to work with, talk to, meet with so many people. People who've had similar experiences, hearing from people who said, I just read my life story, or people who say, I finally feel like I'm not alone, or it's so refreshing that someone has written about the UAPs, UFOs, non human alien entities from a biblical perspective. Because
Yeah.
there's so much out there and so much has been written, and the market is just flooded with this kind of information, but not from a biblical perspective, not explaining who and what these things are, their origins. People like Vicki Joy Anderson and myself will dig into some of the ancient origins of things, and we'll dig into the not, just that, but into the biblical origins, because that's where everything always leads back, and what the explanations are and where it's from, and that's what was really lacking in this field, was someone to explain these are the things they don't want to teach you in church. And if someone had taught me these things when I first was found my faith and born again at about 18, I might have been able to stop this from happening to me. But nobody taught these things to me in the churches I went to. So this has really been an exciting journey, an interesting journey, sometimes scary. There are a lot of people who don't want to talk about this. It's not always a popular topic. There is still a lot of stigma out there. But it's been fascinating. And sorry, that is a very long winded introduction of who I am. But in a nutshell, I'm just your everyday average person who had some extraordinary experiences and lived to tell about them.
Yeah. No. Amazing story. Yeah. So basically, ever since, so just to talk about stigma, yeah, I get it. Um, Being a veteran, being a product of childhood abuse and trauma, there's so much of this stuff you couldn't really talk about. And now, even it's so much better now than it used to be. The stigma is, it's not gone by any
No.
stretch of the imagination, but it's way better. And that's something that I've seen that's super therapeutic to folks, is just being able to have, or having places like this to tell their story, right?
Yes, exactly.
It's a game changer.
It is. And I'm not a therapist. I'm not in any way, shape or form. But people want to share their experiences with me because they have never been able to share those in a safe environment before, because they can't go to a
Absolutely.
therapist with it because the
With
therapist
zero
will,
judgment.
yeah, no judgment. And yeah, I'm not here to say I believe someone or not. I'm here to listen with an open mind and an open heart, knowing that what happened to me is extraordinary and hard for some to believe. And I don't want anyone else to feel that kind of judgment and the pain that
Right.
goes along with that. When you know what's happened to you, you know. Um, and there's no benefit in telling this story except to help others, because most people just there still is so much stigma out there. As a matter of fact, I wrote last month for L.A. Marzulli's newsletter. Vicki Joy Anderson and I both write for that, and so many other wonderful authors. So if anyone out there wants a great inexpensive newsletter, I think it's like $2 a month. You get tons of amazing authors in there. I wrote about stigma. What is stigma? And what are the definitions of it, and where does it come from, and how does it affect people? Because it really does hurt people. And whether it's the UAP or the military or abuse or so many different things where the stigma just is out there, and it causes people to make snap judgments instead of really looking at the person and what they've been through and the healing and the love that they need. It's really unfortunate. And so I thought it was important to write about that and how we can help kind of remove some of the stigmas out there, not just about this, but about all kinds of things.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I know your background, but I don't know if my audience does. So, which you've given
Sure.
your bio, but I'm just going to give you just a couple of questions. It's kind of
Okay.
starting from the beginning a little bit. Is
Sure.
I know that this has been going on like your entire life,
Yes.
right? So, but what was the first moment that you realized something unusual was happening in your life?
Yeah. It's so hard to say because it was happening from my very earliest memories. And for me, I don't even know if I knew it was unusual. I just knew it was scary because it was always happening. And I didn't have any basis for comparison for it not happening, you know?
Right.
So when it's always there, while it may seem normal, it is still traumatizing and scary um, and difficult. And so I remember being a very young child, 2, 3 years old, and being terrified of, certain family members because had they were tall and fair skinned and fair haired and fair eyed, and they looked like these Nordic entities that I had already been encountering as a very small child. And when you're a little kid, you don't make those differences that, oh, that's a human and that's not. They just look similar. So when a little kid's scared of a clown, they're going to be scared of all clowns. Like my daughter was scared of anything in a costume,
Right.
and it didn't matter what kind of costume. It could have been the grocery store guy dressed as a grocery bag, or a bunny or whatever. We had to get out of there if she saw that. And for me, it was the same kind of thing. Anything that was similar scared me as a little child. And then, when I was old enough to know, around 5 or 6 years old, that I didn't want to be there, but I didn't have a choice. And I was scared and I didn't want them to take me. And I started trying to find places to hide. Um, and realizing at that point that I couldn't get away from them. That's when I realized this is unusual, because I started trying to talk to people, anyone who would listen. I was drawing pictures. A matter of fact, I don't have it up here with me. I found a picture I drew the other day when I was probably 4 or 5 years old, showing what was happening to me, drawing
Yeah.
their eyes, drawing the spirals going in and out, and this one says to, and this one says from, and I'm trying to show what's happening as best I can as a 5 year old, not knowing what I'm experiencing. I looked at that picture the other day. I'm like, oh my gosh, I had actually drew out what was happening. But and they didn't want me to talk, and then they threatened me with harming my family and my loved ones if I talked. And that's when I knew that it was not normal and it wasn't okay, and then I was stuck in something really difficult. And that's when I kind of created this um, kind of two personalities. It wasn't a split personality.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that I, created a protective part of me that was there when these things happened, and then the part of me that just was there for everyday life. And and it's called dissociative personality disorder, I think.
Yeah.
And it was a great way for protecting. I think God blesses us with things like that to protect our hearts, protect our minds. And in doing so, I was able to so completely just kind of detach from them when they would take me, which is why I think I have as many memories as I do. Because when I wasn't emotionally interacting with them, they weren't having to block my memories because I was just not even there. But I was there, and I was remembering, and I was, keeping track of some of what happened. I don't remember everything, but I do remember quite a bit of what happened. And what I've learned from talking with other former abductees and experiencers is that those of us who dissociated early in life do have more memories than those who didn't, because we were able to separate. And I think that affected their ability to wipe our memories somehow.
Yeah,
I don't know
that's
how.
one of
I
my
mean,
questions.
yeah. Yeah, and I got that a lot, and it took a lot of research on my part, talking to other abductees, trying to figure out what's different about us. Why do we remember? And the one thing that kept coming up was that we dissociated very early in life. And when you think about that, if you're just not present, how can somebody, affect you emotionally, mentally, and kind of wipe your memory if you're not even present for that, even though you're still there? And so, and that's something I'll write about more in the next book that I'm working on now. I don't want to give too much away on that either.
Yeah,
But
no, but that's pretty interesting. That the earlier you are able to dissociate
hmm
and compartmentalize this, right,
yeah,
the more you can remember.
exactly,
Hmm,
exactly.
that's
And so that
interesting.
that affected it quite a bit. And but yeah, so at that point I knew, this wasn't right. And it was terrifying. I was taken against my will. I mean, I would wake up in the middle of the night and just feel evil, like an evil presence in the room. I could feel it before I would see it. Sometimes there'd be lights coming through a window. Sometimes I'd notice something outside a window. Sometimes I'd see one of the typical grays outside a window, or they would be in the room with me. A typical, what people typically talk about seeing, it's the big bulbous head with the big black screen eyes. And these grays are different from the other ones that I encountered. These grays that would show up to get me, their eyes didn't move. They looked like just a big black screen. And their necks were really thin. They were shorter, like 4 feet tall, maybe. Some of them didn't smell very good at all. Sometimes I didn't smell anything, but sometimes I would notice a very bad odor, like sulfur, dead animal excrement, urine, kind
Hmm.
of just different. It's hard to pinpoint it. It was a really awful smell. And I have a lot of theories behind that too. I write a little bit about that, and I will be writing more about that too. And I've written about it in LA's newsletter. But I think that what these things are, and I can talk about that more later because I don't want to get too far off track
Yeah.
from what I was talking about now. But they would show up in my room, at least two, sometimes more, and put me into a state of waking paralysis. So I was wide awake. If I tried to scream, no one would hear me. Anyone else there, if there's someone else in the room or the house, would be in just a state of just passed out, kind of like you couldn't rouse them, you couldn't wake them. If it was a sibling, or at the time, later in life, if I was with a husband or something, um, and they would levitate me off of the bed and through a closed window or through a ceiling. And it sounds so strange, but I like how Dr. David Jacobs refers to it. We're dealing with things called future physics here, where just because we don't understand how it works doesn't mean it doesn't work. I mean, I was exposed to so many things throughout my lifetime that didn't make sense to me as a small child, but later in life I saw come to fruition. Things like rooms that were nothing but video screens, and today we have that. Things that seemed like at the time impossible, but today with a pair of VR goggles, I'm experiencing the same thing, which is why I do not like using those. Um, things that they were doing with me or showing me that was so far beyond our tech at the time. Screens that appeared and disappeared, and they would, you know, utilize just all these, and the mind speak and things that just didn't make sense at the time to me as a child, because we didn't have those kinds of things. Anything, I didn't have any basis for comparison. We had three channels, 4, 6, 10, and then sometimes
Yeah.
PBS would show up on the U channel, or 13, or whatever it was. But we just didn't have, anything like that. And I didn't have TV shows or anything, or podcasts or YouTube or anything to figure out what was happening to me either. Even as I was growing up, there was no basis for me to figure out what was going on. People talked about UFOs back then, and there were some weird things going on, but it wasn't like what we have today. And then even once we did have shows, I could never watch the shows. I couldn't. It was so triggering and so difficult when before I was able to work through what's happened to me. I couldn't watch a show. I couldn't watch a movie. I couldn't read a book about it. I couldn't go anywhere near it because I would have nightmares, or I felt like that would just summon them back to me. And so the more shut down I was, the better. Obviously, it's not that way now. Now I know that they can't touch me, but for the longest time, I didn't know that, and I didn't know how to keep them away. So it was a terrifying life. I mean, I couldn't even look out the window at night for most of my life, for fear that one of them would be there, because they so often were. And they're terrifying. When Whitley Strieber's book came out, oh my goodness, I remember seeing that book across the bookstore, I think at Barnes and Noble or whatever it was at the time. Ugh, and just having a panic attack because I'd never seen a picture of one that was, and they didn't look just like that, but it was close enough,
Right.
that it was just terrifying to see. And I've since heard a lot of people have reactions like that to that book. So, it was something that it was time for something like that to come out so that people, I think it triggered a lot of people's memories too.
Man.
Yeah, it was
So,
interesting.
yeah, for sure. So do you believe the entities that you encountered? So it was always the little grays that came and got you.
Right. When the ones who would be like in the room or
Yeah.
transporting were always the little grays, and I believe they are some kind of an avatar, like a created entity. L.A. Marzulli likes to call them a meat suit.
The meat
I
suit,
believe
right?
that, yeah, I
Yeah.
believe that they're created to be here in our atmosphere, to do the traveling, to do the pickups. I do believe that they could be inhabited by AI. They could be inhabited by another entity. I personally believe most of them are inhabited by demonic entities. Um,
Hmm.
Demons, to me, are the disembodied spirits of the deceased Nephilim, which I think your audience is pretty familiar with
Yep,
Nephilim.
I'd say
Yeah,
they are.
so I shouldn't have to go. Okay, I won't go down that road. But so that's what I really think are inhabiting them, and I've had some opposition to that. Say, well, demons are hard. They spew terrible language, and they're rape and pillage and murder and all that stuff. And like, do they? Do they all? Are they all the same? Was every Nephilim the same? Or don't we know from historical reference that they all had different personalities? And these are in a very constricted avatar suit. These grays, their mouths did not open. Their bodies were very frail. They were designed to be traveling. They were designed to be in our atmosphere. They weren't designed to rape and pillage and murder and kill and steal.
Right.
They were designed
Right.
for a job. And what we do know biblically is that demons want to inhabit something. From the way back, people would build statues for them to inhabit. When Jesus cast them out of the man, they asked to be sent into the pigs because they wanted to be in something. So this gives them something to house them. And also, if we have crashed craft, which we know we do, when they get those biologics, those non-human biologics, all they're going to get is an empty meat suit. And my theory on that too is these suits are created using tissue that's collected from humans, from the cattle mutilations. There are also human mutilations. You don't hear much about that, but they do exist. They have happened just the same as with the cattle, the sheep, other animals. And they utilize these materials and these tissues for many different things. One for embryonic use, and one I think also for use for these grays that they create, among other things. And again, that's something I'll need to cover more fully in the next book as well, because I've had a lot of questions about that. And the things that I talk about and the things I'm going to write about in the next one, I'm not trying to sell a next book, don't get me wrong. It's just when people ask these questions, I want to provide as much information as I can. And you'll hear about it when I'm talking to someone. I'm not trying to hold that information back.
Right.
But people like a little more detail, and I'm like, I will provide that. I want to make sure I can provide as much detail as I can for everyone, because there's so many misconceptions out there about who and what these things are. I don't believe in the plurality of worlds. I do not believe these things are from Zeta Reticuli or Alpha Centauri or some other planet. I do believe they could travel. Right. I think that they can travel extraterrestrially, but I really believe they are interdimensional. Our government believes that. Anyone who's had any experience with them knows that. They are interdimensional entities. They are entities that have been around far longer than we have. They can travel space, time in ways we can only we can't even fathom. They can see ahead and behind in time. We know this biblically. Why have you come for us before our time? They said to Jesus. They know what some of the future looks like. They know the Bible better than we do. They know us. They know our personalities. They know our psyche better than we do. And when people are out there calling these things and summoning these things with things like CE5, it terrifies me, because we are so out of our depth. We are so out of our league when we're doing these things. And if we couldn't call on God, if we couldn't call on Jesus to get us out of these situations, to get them away from us, we would have no chance. Honestly, we are not a superior being to them. He is. God is, because he's the creator of all. And that's the only reason I was able to get away from him. But yeah, these entities are, I believe, the fallen angels, the ones that, you've spoken about on the show before, and there are different ones that fell for different reasons and did different things. And we know this from the books of the Bible and the extra canonical books of the Bible. And from historical references and historical records that aren't the Christian Bible, but throughout all races, creeds, religions, countries, everywhere, there are records of this all over the world. And so there's just so much that is misinterpreted about who and what these things are. It's very easy to say, oh, they come from space. But how do you know that? How do you know that? Because one person said, oh, I got taken and they told me this is where they were from. Do you know if they were telling you the truth? Would you know if they were telling you the truth? Was that person telling you the truth? They might have been told a lie by the entities, So how do you know? How do you know? You don't. Yeah. And those of us who've been taken, we've seen things and experienced things that don't make sense, because it's so far outside of the little square that we live in, that's these 3 dimensions of life that we are in, and it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit in our little world, and then we try to make it fit. So we come up with these examples. So it's like Star Trek, they're going from here to there. No, it's not. It's not at all like that. Except maybe the part where they transport, that might be, but no, it's just so different. So yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about that.
How did your Christian faith influence your understanding of the abduction phenomenon? And did you see it as part of a larger spiritual war? Do you?
I didn't initially. Initially, I did not see any connection at all, because I wasn't taught my Bible in the churches. I was taught the fun parts of the Bible, the easy, the pretty parts, the parts that get butts and pews, the parts that make you come back and feel good about life and happy. And now God wants you to go make some money and have a great life and be happy and fun and all this. And suffer, and but all the things. But you know what I mean. Follow the 10 Commandments, go home, have a great day. We'll see you in a week. And when God opened my eyes to the Bible and brought the right people into my life, and it happened in a very unusual way. I had an experience with surgery where I died on the table. And I know near-death experiences, I call it a near-life experience, because I didn't die. Man is appointed to die only once. But I heard his voice. He said, it's okay. You can let go now. He snatched me out of my body. I watched everything. I could see what was happening in all these different rooms. I felt the most incredible love and peace that beyond all understanding. I knew I was with him. I knew I was safe. I had no questions, no fears, no nothing. I was right there, very close to my body. And when it was time, I was right back in. There was no, I didn't go anywhere weird. I didn't see grandma. I didn't hang out with my dog. I didn't,
Right.
it was just the most peace and love. But what I got from it was this understanding of, the body, the spirit, the soul are very different things. And he loves us so much, and we do go on. And this is just our earthly vessel, and it's so constricting. And we know so little. We know nothing, coming out of that, realizing I always knew that I didn't know and that we just don't know much about anything. I came out of that realizing I know even less than the nothing I thought I knew. It was such a humbling experience. And that just led me at first I really opened up and studied almost every religion there was. I went down some new age paths, and then I realized I'm not a co-creator. And this, you can be a co-creator. Isn't that like the whole Garden of Eden thing? And really opened my eyes to what was going on out there in the world. And then I just jumped in to the Bible and studied and listened and learned. And when it's very humbling when you realize how stupid you are. And that's what I
Oh
realized, is
yeah.
how stupid I was. And I just let God teach me. And I still realize I still know nothing. But and that teaching really opened my eyes to the fact that these things are in the Bible from Genesis to Revelation. They're
Hmm.
all through it, and references to them are all through it. And we don't have a book about the angelic beings. Angels is a misnomer. I use it because that's how most people refer to
Yeah.
these. Maybe the being Elohim, the
That's how
sons
we
of God.
understand it.
Yeah, so that you understand. But the other entities that God created before us to serve Him, and there we don't have a book about them. We have a book about us and about our salvation, and that's
Hmm.
all we need. But and everything we need is in there. I believe that. I believe it's the inerrant word of God. I believe people have messed with it, taken books out and moved
Yeah.
things around. I believe we have to be, I believe the original intent was for that. So you got to
I
be
always like
careful
the
with
way
that.
Timothy Alberino explains it as the elder race.
Yes, the elder races, exactly. They were here before us, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and they were on this planet before us, and they want it back. Thus, his book, Birthright. They want that back. It's our birthright, but they wanted it back. And when they rebelled, God's like, look, I'm going to make a man out of dirt. How must that have made them feel? No wonder they're so angry. No
Yeah,
wonder they
right.
tried to
I mean,
breed.
some
No
of them,
wonder.
not all of them.
Yeah,
Maybe
not
they're all
all of them.
disgruntled, but some of them are more obedient than others. You never know.
Right. I think the ones that are obedient understand that, well, they aren't the ones who rebelled in the first place. So they probably know that they're going to get to come back here at some point.
Yeah,
And for them,
there's a
time,
bigger game here than
yeah,
this. Yeah.
it's not just our little piece of territory here in this little 3D world that we live in. It because again, we're trying to fit it in our little box that we live in. It doesn't work that way. It's never going to fit. And I think that you know we won't see that big picture until we get there. And so I think that and it's just my opinion, but I really do believe that the ones who rebelled and who fell just they want it back now. They don't want to wait. And I know
Yeah.
time doesn't exist for them the way it does for us, so who knows, it could be a blink of an eye for them, but I don't think they want to wait. And I think they enjoy torturing us. I mean, it's just part of what evil is. And
I mean,
I
part
like
of it
how
could be too that they're just playing their role.
yeah, exactly. Because you have to think about it. I like how Vicky Joy Anderson talks about. I'm sorry to bring her up a lot. We're just friends, so we talk all the
No,
time.
I
But
love her. She's
yeah,
awesome.
she's
We
my
had a great
really one of my
episode.
favorite.
So,
Yeah, you did. If y'all haven't listened to it, please go listen to it because I'll be referring to it. She, how she says that, she thinks that, and when she was talking with, can't remember who, anyway, about how, God allowed the Satan or the evil one to come
yeah.
back in here. We need the evil. They're playing a role.
Well,
And they
the
could just be
Satan
playing a role.
is a job title. It's like
He's a job
angel.
title, right? Yeah. So, and that they're playing a role because we wouldn't know good if we didn't have the evil, and he wouldn't be able to see who truly loves him, and he wouldn't be able to we wouldn't be able to test that faith. So for me, that's a long answer to your question, but was did I didn't always see the connection. the biblical
Yeah.
connection. But once I did, I found it fascinating, and I also found it scary that there wasn't no people weren't talking about it. People like L.A. Marzulli were talking about it. That's what led me to him. That's why I shared
Hmm.
my story with him first, and that just led to a friendship and a relationship that I had never, never expected in a million years. But just the most amazing friendship and relationship, and being able to be a part of those documentaries and be a part of his ministry, and be a part of that family has with him and Vicky and everyone else has just been amazing. So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I just don't. I think it's meant. There's smoke screens put up for us all over the place to divert
oh
us from seeing what it actually is, right? And I think that's why they the enemy is very effective, and that's what I like to call it, the enemy, not Satan, not whatever,
right,
because again, Satan is just a job title. And Vicky
exactly.
explains this very well. Also, like people like Ed Mabry and people explain that they're like a prosecutor. They're not
Yes.
necessarily evil,
Yeah.
right? A lot of it. Now,
Right.
there are evil entities, obviously, but like Satan,
Hmm.
the Hasatan,
Hmm.
whatever you want to call
Yeah.
that, the job of that entity is to be a prosecutor and to say, hey, God, look, wait,
Look what they
here's what they
did.
did,
Yeah.
you know, and open those doors and almost give permission. It's like they're fighting for permission for your faith to be tested. That's what they're doing
Yes.
in
Oh
essence.
yeah.
So
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. And isn't that the biblical story from the get go?
from the
Isn't
get go.
that been their job from the first page of the, from the first page to the last? That's been their job.
That's
That's
the
why I
whole
always
thing,
call
the
it
whole
the
Garden of
Satan instead
Eden,
of Satan.
everything.
Yeah. Yeah. It's through the whole thing. And it's like, it is all a test that we can learn to love him better, that we can learn to love each other better, that we can kind
Yeah,
of figure out who and what we are that he made. Because God made us, but he wants us to understand us. And he knows we never will, but he's given us this free will and this duality in us to, and he wants us to understand it so that we can choose to embrace that beautiful goodness that he's blessed us with. And that it takes, it takes a little bit of both, because without the bad you would never understand the good,
oh,
never
right. Well,
appreciate
you
it.
got to
So,
have them both.
yeah, and it's just the way he's created the universe, and it makes sense. But it's so much bigger when you try to start thinking about it. Your brain starts to just bubble over,
Yeah, gets a
and
little
then get back to
melty.
that. I know nothing. I know nothing.
Yeah,
And but there's just so much to it, and the more I study and the more I read and the more I look into all of these things, it's just like there's so much information out there. There's so much for us. We'll never get through it all. We'll never
yeah,
get through it all. And so my goal is to gather as much as I can, help explain what happened to me in a way that will help people understand better what's really going on, and then share that. And so that's what I'm trying to do. That's what I try to do with this book. That's what I try to do when I speak. That's what I try to do at conferences, and that's what I will continue to try to do. And I think that's the ministry that God's put on my heart is,
yeah,
just and to let people share their experiences in a
yeah.
safe environment, because there aren't places to do that.
True.
Yeah.
So you talk about, and you and LA and a bunch of talk about this hybridization program, right?
Yes.
And that you were a part of that.
Yes.
Part of your abduction stuff was because of that,
Yes.
whether the
Yes.
breeding program, whatever you want to
Yes.
call it, right?
Right.
Like, so with that being said, what do you believe that is the ultimate goal of that hybridization program?
That's a great question. And, I think I think it's a multi pronged goal. One, this came from the late Dr. Chuck Missler, and I agree with this wholeheartedly, when he said Satan is outnumbered 2 to 1, and the Satan, or, he's building an army.
Hmm.
And the opposition is building an army, and they want that army to be faithful to them. So they want a counterfeit kingdom. They're trying. It's the same as from the beginning. He was there was that jealousy, and that, I want to be the most They say he was the most beautiful of all the beings. He still wants I'm losing the word that I'm looking for, but just so full of himself. And
The
to
light
create this,
bringer.
yeah, right. And to create this counterfeit kingdom, to create, he can't create from nothing like God did, but so he's going to create using God's creation and counterfeit it, which is how the breeding program comes into play. So you're going to
And it
take
seems like
humans
that's what
and
they
take
do
a
with
piece
everything.
of that, yeah, and create a
Counterfeit
counterfeit
everything.
version. It's always been a counterfeit kingdom, and it's something that was going on from the beginning, from the get go. From the time when the Genesis 6 and the sons of the Meha Elohim saw the daughters of men were beautiful and made of them wives plural of all that they chose, and those were the mighty men of old, the Nephilim, the Gibberim, the what have you, and we kind of have this outdated notion that, well, I don't see giants walking around. Well, nothing in there says that they were all giants. Some of them were, but there were different kinds. You had the Zazumine and all the different kinds, and the long necks and the ones that made the funny noise. Just I won't go down through them all, but there's a huge list, and I don't have it in front of me. But so you're gonna have different kinds. You're gonna have short ones and tall ones and giant ones, and they're gonna create different kinds of entities from that. So we have to be careful to not try to make it all just one thing. Everyone gets kind of stuck on the giants. Yes, I believe that those were there. I grew up knowing that. I grew up in the central Ohio area around the ancient earthworks, the mounds, and we grew up just knowing that they came and took the giant bones from the mounds.
Mm-hmm.
They were excavated.
Yeah.
It was just, we knew. No one questioned it. And that how it just kind of gets buried over time and everyone forgets. So it's kind of a bad word to use.
Absolutely.
But, yeah, but so it's I've got a friend who's on her way to England. She's going to be at the British Museum. I'm like, can you go ask them for the bones in the basement that they took?
Right. Right.
Every time I'm there, I ask. They never give them to me. Maybe they'll give them to you. I don't know. She's an archaeologist. We'll see. But
at least can I see him?
Yeah, can I see him? I know what the label says. Okay. Just let me in the basement. It'll be fine. I promise I won't take anything.
I promise I won't do anything.
I won't take anything that's not mine. But yeah, it's so, I think that, but back to the question. Yeah, I think, it's a multi-pronged thing. I think part of it is building an army. I think part of it is a birthright, trying to be just human, and how human do you have to be to have the birthright? And then how many people can they influence to not accept Jesus into their heart? How many people can they influence to not then, like you guys were talking about before, have their public defender when their day comes? Because those are, we don't know enough about how the end is all going to play out. We got some good information. We don't know everything.
Right.
We know God is a good and merciful God. We don't know what the millennial kingdom is going to look like. We don't know who's going to get to come back from where and what all is going to happen. But the more people we can keep out of that, or from having their defender, from having Jesus in their heart, from knowing the truth, I think it's a multi-pronged thing that they're trying to do. And like Vicki said, it's all the same arena. We've just got a lot of different players in there. And then with each generation, the players get new names. It goes from UFO to UAP. It goes from ghost to demon. It goes from Nephilim to, and everyone, it gets a new name. It gets a new branding. It gets new Hollywood branding. It gets new, everything. And so we're always still talking about the same thing. It's been the same there's nothing new under the sun.
Right.
So it's just the same story over and over again, right? And it does say in the end, it will be like the days of Noah. And what was happening in the days of Noah? Well, they were chimeras. They were mixing animals. Well, aren't we doing that again? Yes, we are. And they're, like to bring back the extinct species, they're mixing them with other DNA. Well, that's a chimera.
Well, you just saw the dire wolf, right?
Yes. So,
which wasn't exactly a dire. So I think what people need to understand is it's not exactly like bringing back an extinct species. Is that what they did is they took pieces of DNA from a dire wolf and added them to a gray wolf to like make a dire wolf.
So it's a mix,
and
right?
they can do that. They can do almost anything.
There's labs in other countries. You just have to do a little Google search and you'll find all kinds of labs making species or taking extinct species. And we mixed it with the common species. Now you've got the elephant slash
Mammoth.
mastodon, whatever, yeah, going
Yeah,
on. I'm like,
yeah.
oh my gosh, what are we doing?
And they
You know,
did this project completely under wraps. Like they did because they've been talking about how they're doing the same company. What is it? Colossus Genetics or whatever it
mhm.
is working on the mammoth. They're also
Yes.
working on the thylacine, but they're also working on a couple other animals too. And nobody even had the dire wolf on the radar. And then boom, this is just proof
Right.
of concept. That's all it
Yeah.
is.
There's so much going on that we don't know. And this is what I noticed from the get go when I was being taken. There were humans. I saw humans whenever I was taking and wherever I was taking to in these facilities that were clearly underground. There were humans there too, working
Working with them, right?
alongside the entities that were not human. The non human alien entities that were in these things, they weren't like the little grays that would come to get me. They were gray alien type entities whose eyes moved, who were all different. Some were taller, some were shorter, some looked more feminine, some looked more masculine, some looked older. Their faces had expression, their mouths open. They weren't like the little grays. There were some that looked reptilian, there were some that looked more insectoid, and they all kind of crossed over. Like I can group them into gray, reptilian, insectoid, and the um, Nordic. But all of those cross over, and there's some that look kind of like a cross between a Nordic and an insectoid, or a gray and a, you know, it
Yeah.
just, and then I
Hybrids
see,
and stuff,
yeah,
right?
exactly. Or, and who knows how many, were those hybrids, or are they just different versions that God created? I mean, I have
Yeah.
no idea. I don't, they didn't know, no one ever sat me down and said, so, these are all the ones. They weren't big on sharing information. Let's put it that way. Everything I have, I've just gleaned from my memories, and very
Right.
little was ever offered to me. The only things ever offered to me was, "Oh, we're just here to help. We're just here to save the planet." And kidnapping little children is not helping. Raping women is not helping. Stealing fetuses is not helping. I'm sorry, these are not the actions of a benevolent space brother.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people who will stand by that all day long, and I stand by what I feel, because of what happened to me and what's happened to others. It's tragic. It's not these are not benevolent actions, period, end of story. If they were, they wouldn't need to do these things to offer positive things to us. They could just sit down with our world leaders or whomever and offer information. And we know that that will come in the when they offer, this kind of counterfeit kingdom where everything starts to look wonderful, and they'll say peace and safety, and they'll offer cures for cancer, and all these wonderful things will happen,
The
and they're going to
great
say,
deceit, right?
yeah, the deception. I mean, even the most elect will be deceived, and the elite will be right there, cheering him on, and every people are going to believe it, because a beautiful angelic looking being in white comes down and heals you from your sickness. You're likely to believe the story that they tell you. And that's why
Mm-hmm.
we need to pray for discernment. And that's why we need to have him in our hearts, because otherwise we're going to be deceived. It's going to be really hard to tell. But what I think, and this is my opinion based on the biblical narrative and based on what I've experienced, we're going to know, we're going to feel it, and it's going to be instinct.
Or at least some of us
Instinct.
are, right?
Some of us are. Yeah, those of us who know are going to know. I mean, babies instinctively know from the time they're born. If you show them a picture of a rattlesnake, they're going to jump back. How do they know to do that? How do they know what's dangerous before they have the
Yeah.
ability to understand? God gives us an innate ability. It's in there. And we lose it when we come into the worldly stuff of the world. And we get it back when we let Him come into our heart and
Yeah.
make us new again. And we've got to depend on that discernment. And I pray for that every day, that, don't let me be deceived by Satan coming as an angel of light, or by lying signs and wonders, because I've seen some of the beautiful things they can do. I've been exposed to them, exposed to their deception. And it can be so beautiful and so enticing. and so lovely and comfortable and comforting until it's not, because that is just the first bit of it. The
Yeah.
rest of it is dark and ugly and disgusting and worse than anything you can ever imagine. It's like that pretty candy coating, but it's around a ball of dung.
Yeah.
You don't
So,
want to
as
bite
a
into that.
rule, like many believers struggle to reconcile this UFO phenomenon with their faith.
Yeah.
So, what would you say to Christians who are waking up? That's what I'll say, waking up to
Mhm.
reality,
Yeah.
but they feel really conflicted.
Sure. I can understand that. The world has given us so much misinformation. That's why we feel conflicted. It's not God making you feel conflicted. It's the information and the stigma and the misinformation that the world has already given you about UFOs, UAPs, and aliens.
And so much
When
of
you,
it's upside down.
yes, it is completely backwards, upside down. It is counterfeit information. When you look in the Bible and you talk to people who understand the more esoteric parts of the Bible, there's so much to the Bible. When you ask God to open your heart to the Bible, you realize how fascinating and exciting and interesting and just chock full of so much information. There's not one word in the Bible that is boring. If you're finding it boring, you got to ask God to come in and help you see it differently, because I'll never be able to get through it all, the way I want to. Because, and
Yeah.
it's, there's just, but so it's, that's just,
That's what my wife
but
always says. She's like,
yeah,
"Oh my gosh,
it's
what
so
is this?" She's
good.
like,
It's so
I
good.
can't deal with
Yeah.
the thee, thou, them,
I
and
just
I'm like,
reread this and I
this
see
is
it
why we need to
differently.
get. I was saying this yesterday to a guest. The Lord of the Rings movies,
Yeah.
just
Yes.
amazing, right? Like a
Yeah.
great telling of the hero's journey. We need to get Peter Jackson, who's the producer and director of that, to do the Bible.
Yes. The right way.
Could
The
you
real way.
imagine?
The real Bible.
Exactly. Not like whatever, but man,
Oh,
crazy
that would be
town.
incredible. Yes. And then
It
people
would
would
everybody, but
see.
see, I don't think that'll ever happen because that would
Yes.
change the whole game.
Oh,
Because
it
you would
would.
have people like, okay, I'm on, I'm in it, I
Yeah,
get
I'm
it,
in. This is good. Right?
right,
Right,
right.
exactly. So that's what I say to people who are conflicted and can't reconcile it with their Christian faith. It's in there. It's in this
Mm-hmm.
Bible. It is in here from Genesis to Revelation. It is in here. I mean, I couldn't mark all the pages it's on because it's on almost every page. There's a
Yeah.
reference. There are references to all of this. It's in there. And if you find a good Bible based church that really teaches the whole Bible, they're going to understand that. But it's really hard to find.
We have a
There,
lot of good podcasts too, though,
but yeah, but there are a lot of
that
good
center
podcasts.
on this stuff too, that are
Right.
just
And I think
helps
that
a
that's
lot.
really where we have to go for the information. You have to go outside.
Mm-hmm.
You can't, it's not necessarily going to be found in a church pew somewhere. You're going to have to go and find people who know the word, who know the Lord, who have that love in their heart, who are teachers, who have a ministry on them, who want to share. And you're going to, we know that in these times we are going to be responsible for our own understanding, our own knowledge, our
Mm-hmm.
own information, and we have to share that because it's not going to be shared in the traditional ways. And who says these traditional ways are the right way? We're not following the initial ways that God set it up for us to do anyway. And then a lot of that is old covenant, and there's nothing wrong with following old covenant traditions. They can be lovely and comforting. So it's not wrong to follow them, but we're not even following the way God instructed us most to pray, to fast, to share. It doesn't say you have to get dressed up and go to a big fancy church. It doesn't say that. It's not in there.
And once Jesus came, the game changed anyway.
Yeah, he changed everything. He changed the game. And I like how Vicky talks about the fact that, he wasn't coming out going, "Hi, I'm Jesus. I'm here to say I love you."
So
No,
funny.
he's out.
He
Dude,
wasn't. He
what
wasn't.
you're doing?
He
Yeah,
wasn't dirty hippie Jesus. He was.
no,
He's something
no.
else. But
He
they
wasn't
try
the
to portray
Jesus.
him that way, and it's not true.
Yeah, it wasn't the Jesus of the 1970s, y'all. He wasn't
Mm-mm.
barefoot and wearing tie dye and and
Birkenstocks.
throwing daisies all over everyone. No, he was calling people out on their stuff and saying, "You are the scum of the earth. Get your act together." I'm not, I could use a lot stronger words,
Of
and
course.
telling people like it is, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to say, look, this stuff, this is not cool. What's happening to people? This whole UFO, UAP, alien stuff that's out there. It's a crock of what. It's
Yeah.
people are lying. People are twisting the truth. They're putting it upside down. They're not telling you what's really going on. They're showing just enough truth to pull you in. It's like this three truths and three lies, and there's just
Yeah.
enough truth to pull you in, and then these lies are going to lead you all the way over here into a really bad place. And it sucks. And then so we got to get tough. We got to get a little bit harsh sometimes. I know we're supposed to come with gentleness and love, and I get that, and I try to do that every day. But we've also got to be honest, and we got to be, this is how it is. This is what's happening. Um, and we got to be honest about the truth about who and what these things are. These are the fallen of the Bible. These are the fallen B'nai Elohim, the fallen created ones of the Bible, and they are out to get us. And we got to fight back, and we got to be careful, and we've got to stop anyone we can from trying to connect and invite these things in. Because the CE5, that's what's that. There's a kids movie just came out. If you haven't watched my interview with L.A. Marzulli, it's the last one I did with him. It came out like 2 weeks ago. We're talking about this kids movie that came out. It's called Elio. It's a Disney Pixar movie. And this child is basically doing CE5. He is summoning UFOs. He is summoning aliens to come pick him up. He's inviting them in.
What's the name of it again?
Elio, Elio. I think is how it's spelled. I have it right here.
Okay.
Just talking about it. And yeah, he is summoning and teaching kids how to summon UFOs and aliens, and it's basically CE5 for children.
Yeah.
It's basically, hey, let's summon demons in
Man.
the kindergarten classroom. You know, I know I'll catch flack for that, and I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry because I don't think children should be summoning demonic entities. I know children should not be summoning demonic entities. I don't think about it.
Yeah.
And this scares me. And it's not the first time. I just wrote an article this month for LA's newsletter saying, expanding on that, and how much there is out there teaching little children to do this stuff.
It's awful.
And we don't even realize it. It's like, set them in front of
Yeah.
the Disney Channel or in front of Cartoon Network or in front of, whatever. This is safe. It's rated kids. It's rated, K5 or whatever. It doesn't mean it's safe. Check it out. Check out the belief
Right.
systems. Check
Yeah.
out I'm a mom. I'm a grandma. I worry every day about what these kids are exposed to when we're not watching. And if we didn't have prayer, I don't know what I would do because I can't watch them every minute. I can't be there every
True
minute.
story.
No one can, right? It's a scary world. I know you've got kids too. It's a scary world out there, no matter what their age. There is, and this is just showing, and what I see coming from this too, we are raising a generation that will now 100% believe and understand that aliens, non-human alien entities, UFOs, UAPs, whatever you want to call them, exist. There will be no stigma. It is just that they are there. They exist. So that stigma is going away with our parents, grandparents, and with our kids and grandkids. They're growing up now in a generation that knows that these things exist, knows UFOs and UAPs exist, understands that they're there, and they're looking for guidance as to, okay, so they're here. What do I do about it? How do I feel about it? And they're being taught how to feel about it in movies like this. Oh, you ask them to come get you because they're your benevolent space brothers? No. No. But that's what's being taught. And we have to offer a counterpoint to every one of these things from a biblical perspective. I'm not pushing Christianity down anyone's throat. I'm not pushing religious beliefs or anything down anyone's throat, but I am saying this is dangerous. There are alternatives. Just know the truth before you sit in front of something like this and expose your children to it. It's scary. It's scary
Absolutely.
to me. As a person, it's scary.
So the show is called Broadcasting Seeds. And I like to like wrap things up with something where you're planting seeds. You know what I mean, in people's
Okay.
minds. So, the question I've got for you is, what message do you want to leave with people who feel like they've had similar experiences, right?
Mhm.
But are still too afraid to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I understand that fear. Trust me. I do firsthand. I never wanted to talk about this in public. I had no intention of ever talking about this. I really didn't, believe it or not. Um, it's okay. You don't have to talk about it if you don't want. You never have to talk about it. But what you should do as a Christian is you should be prepared to share the truth of who and what these things are with anyone who is interested. And I will tell you what, the interest in UFOs, UAPs, aliens is phenomenal right now. I guarantee your neighbors are interested. When I wrote this book, I didn't expect to hand it out to my neighbors, but I did, and they were thrilled to get it. I didn't expect that. Yeah, I was kind of new in this neighborhood too, so I'll preface it with that too. Um, you know, so just be prepared. Even if you're not comfortable talking about it, there are places you can talk about it. Go to my website, KarinWilkinsonAuthor.com, VickyJoyAnderson.com. Here, Broadcasting Seeds. There are a lot of places you can go to find direction, to find places to go, if you just want to share your story. Um, but I highly, highly, highly recommend and ask that you understand who and what these things are from a biblical perspective so that you can share that with others, because they will be deceived by the misconceptions that are going on right now in the general public. These things that they're telling us are not true, and they're dangerous. They're very dangerous, in my opinion.
Great. Yeah,
I might
that
have an
one person
educated
that you
opinion
talk
because I've
to
been there.
might change or save their
Yeah,
life.
and they might
And
save
isn't that
someone
worth
else's
it?
life. Yeah, right. Isn't that worth it? If I get through to one person doing this, I I am so grateful, and
Right.
I can leave this earth happy. Um, and just think of it that way. That
Yeah,
could be
you're
the
already
one
winning at
person.
that point, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you're gonna
Well,
get up there and
you've changed my outlook, so you're winning.
really, oh my, yeah. If that happens, you mean I've changed your outlook? No, or
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
saying
I
no.
mean, when I first heard your story, I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And it just changed the way it started me down the path. Between you and LA, it started me down the path of change, like the way
Yeah,
that I thought about these things, and it's like once you keep opening those curtains, man, it just
yeah.
then you get caught and you're just sliding down a slide and you can't stop it. So
And
it's
you're
over.
hungry for more information,
It's
right?
over.
It's yeah, it's all over once you start learning,
Uh,
and you how again how much you don't know. Oh, it's
yeah,
all
it's
over.
like Alice, man. You're caught in a rabbit hole and you ain't come. That's it.
You're never, yeah, you're gonna, in it, but it's in a good way. It's like the one that takes you up,
Yeah,
not
it's not a
takes you
bad
down.
way.
Yeah, it's the good rabbit hole, and God just wants to keep feeding you once you start getting
Exactly.
this good information. And yeah, it's I every day learn something new about this that just shocks and amazes me, and sometimes delights me. And I am thrilled when I meet people like you who are sharing this with others, because they're just, we need more of this. We need
Yeah, for
more
sure.
places to talk about it, more places to share about it. And yeah, I just, that's definitely the seeds that I want to plant is know who and what these things are. There are lots of references. I talk about it, I explain it very clearly in this book. I'll explain it again in the next one. You can find it in LA's work. You can find it here at Broadcasting Seeds, and make sure you're prepared to share that truth in a way that people are comfortable with and that they can understand. And even if it's just to say, go listen to this here, listen to this interview, listen to this
Right.
podcast, or go to this website, or just have something available. I always have things with, not this, but I have like little notepads and stuff with my QR code on it. When I'm out and about, I'm like, here, would you like a notepad? Just, it'll send people to my website,
Absolutely.
and then it'll answer some questions, and they can find me if they've got questions. I have to, not be afraid to reach out instead of waiting for people to reach out to me. I am reaching out, and
Absolutely.
sometimes that's the best way to share and to share God's word and God's truth. We think witnessing and ministering is going around handing out tracts on a street corner. That's not it. It can be, but there's a lot more to it than that.
Hmm.
And again, you don't have to walk around with sandals and braids and tie dyes and sing and whisper everything in the 1970s Jesus way. There's nothing wrong with that, but I think that we have to be honest with people and share as much as we can.
Absolutely. So you brought up that you're writing a new book,
Oh yeah.
but what's next for you? More
um,
speaking, expanding your work
yeah,
in any other directions, any new directions, or
yeah. I just kind of go where God sends me. I try not to make too many concrete plans. My everything's been kind of disjointed this first half of the year. I've been kind of waiting to have a surgery done, which keeps getting put off because of the insurance companies. And that's another huge mess. But I'm just putting my faith in God. I figure He's got a plan for that too. So I'm just going to keep sharing information. I speak, wherever I'm invited to speak, I'll go speak. I love public speaking. I tend to follow, Vicky and I tend to follow L.A. Marzulli around on his conferences as well. So I know that, we both spoke with him at a Prophecy Watchers conference in Branson last year. We'll probably do that again this year, later this year, and I'll
I
have
could
more
think of
information
worse
about that.
people to follow around.
Yeah, right. It's fun to be part of that team. Yeah. So we all get, we're all there. We get to run the table together. We get to meet with people, witness, and just talk with people. And it's just so great to do those things. I know Vicki and I are planning to be at the Prophecy Watchers Conference in Oklahoma in October. We are both planning to be there, and hopefully we will both be up on stage with LA sharing as well. So we're really looking forward to that. Other than that, I don't have a ton planned because of my schedule's a little up in the air. So
Yeah,
I know she and I are both working on books right now, and long overdue, but we've been so busy. God throws us in all these directions, and I'm happy and grateful to do it. I love that I get to have this ministry and, spend this time with people. And I'll just go, like I said, wherever he sends me, that's where I'll go. So I'm excited to do it.
perfect. So again, tell us where we can find you again.
Sure. The book is available currently exclusively at lamarzulli.com or lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.com or .net. You can find links to that through my social media and my website. My website is just my name, KarinWilkinsonAuthor.com. You can find me on social media, and I'll have a link tree on my social media. If you go into my profile, you can find a link tree that will take you to wherever you want to go with the other social medias or my website or what have you. So if you want to reach out to me, please don't send me a message through social media. It's so hard to get through those. They just get lost because I get hundreds in there, and there's so much spam in there. It's hard to figure out what is somebody trying to get through to me. You can reach out to me through my website, my email. It links directly into my email, so it comes
I
straight
can
to
tell
me,
you
not
that's how I got a
else.
hold of her. So
Yes, and it was great. Woohoo! Right? And I will give you my email here. It's stolenseed@yahoo.com. You can go right to that one, and that's the one that you'll get through my website. But yeah, reach out to me that way. I love to hear from people, even if you just want to share your story. If you have reached out to me through my website and I have not gotten back to you, it probably means something happened and your message didn't come through. So please try again, because I don't want to ever ignore anyone, and I would hate for someone to think I was ignoring them when I really just didn't get the message.
sometimes
So,
things happen though,
yeah, that happens. So it's not a perfect science. These things fail all the
and it's
time.
not
So,
personal.
and it's not personal. Please don't think it's personal. It's either it got lost or I'm having surgery and I'm not answering anyone. So there's only two reasons I'm not going to get back to you. So, because I really appreciate that. And I know how much courage it takes to share. It takes an incredible amount of courage and trust to share your story with someone. And I don't share anyone's stories. Um, if you want me to, you can say you're welcome to share this. Um, that's fine, but I don't ever share anyone's stories. If you send me something, that's between us. Period. I don't share that information, and I don't. anyone who's listened to me and any of the hundreds of interviews I've done, I don't ever talk about anyone else's story but my
Well,
own.
you say it too. It's like a
Yeah.
confessional, right? You just
Yeah,
don't,
right.
you don't share
Yeah.
it.
I don't. It's not my story to share, and
Exactly.
that's the hardest part about sharing these things is you share in confidence because you're uncomfortable with it because of the stigmas, and I understand that very well. So just for me, it's just such an important piece of this to get across. It's such an important message. So, but thank you for the
Amazing.
opportunity to share my information, and I am working on my website. I have someone who's going to help me with it, thank goodness, and so it should be better soon. So look forward to
Awesome.
that.
I look forward to it.
Yeah.
Again, Karin, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your
Thank you,
story.
Bennett. Thank you, Bennett.
I got bad thoughts that make my mind scared. Hold me hostage and they don't fight fair. Who gon' pray for me and wipe all my tears? Who gon' save me if you not right here? Move this darkness and make my sight clear. Take me your way cause I don't like here. Ghosts of my past, they feeling the night air. Wake me up, I'm trapped in my nightmares. Wake me up, I'm trapped in my nightmares. Drowning, I'm off the deep end. Apparitions of all my demons. All my thoughts are committing treason. All alone, who gon' hear me screaming? Manifestations of my fears. Regrets that stretched out for light years. Can almost touch the light, homie, it's right there. Body free but trapped in my nightmares. Wake me up, don't let me drown. All the lights are fading now. All my life is fading now. All my life is fading.